Let's talk about ventilation. Ventilation is an important part of a healthy home and plays a role in controlling moisture, mold, and disease, including viruses like influenza and COVID-19. In this video, we'll discuss the basics of ventilation and air exchange and how they work inside your home. In the summer of 1776, John Adams and Ben Franklin were traveling together through New Jersey. When stopping for the night in New Brunswick, they were only able to secure a single room in a local inn. Adams believed that the cold air would result in illness. He told Franklin, "Close the window so we can keep out the cold." Franklin countered that the window should remain open. He said, "The air within this chamber will soon be, and indeed is now, worse than that without doors." By breathing and rebreathing indoor air, Franklin stated, "We should imbibe the real cause of colds, not from abroad, but from within." Franklin was one of a small but growing group of scientists in the 1700s who believed that colds were contagious, and whatever was spreading the cold was in the air. Now, people around the world had known for millennia that if they wanted to build an indoor fire for heating or cooking, they would need a hole to draw the smoke out of their home and a ventilation shaft to pull in replacement air. The Anasazi and their pueblos offer just one example of the sophisticated building designs used to create a healthy indoor environment. By the mid-1800s, people like the physician David Boswell Reed were beginning to ask, how can we best move the indoor air so that it's not just more comfortable and less smoky, but is also healthier? From the architecture of the ancient pueblos of the desert Southwest to the writings of Dr. Reed, a picture emerges of the fundamentals of building ventilation. This video offers a brief overview of how building ventilation works and how we can modify it to create a healthier environment. Air is always moving. Our challenge is that it doesn't always move as much as we'd like. By understanding how air moves, we can work to circulate the air so it doesn't stagnate. The three main factors that move air in a building are temperature differences, wind pressure, and mechanical forces that we use to move air, such as fans. So, how do temperature differences work? To understand temperature differences, let's imagine a hot air balloon. The balloon rises when the flame below heats the air trapped inside the balloon. That's because even though we can't see air, there's still something there, the air molecules. Heating the air trapped inside the balloon causes the air molecules to move quickly and spread out. Because this warm air is expanding, we say that warmer air is lighter than cooler air. If you want to lower your altitude, you can either stop heating the air inside the balloon or open a flap at the top to release that hot air. The air inside the balloon gradually cools until its temperature is comparable to that of the air outside. The molecules slow down and stop expanding. Now that the air inside the balloon is no longer lighter than the air outside, the balloon descends. Now let's consider a home like this one in Iowa. It's wintertime, and the outdoor air temperature is just 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Sitting inside a 40-degree building wouldn't be very comfortable, so the resident turns on the heat. The indoor building temperature eventually rises to 68 degrees. Unlike the hot air balloon, the building does not lift off the ground, thank goodness. But like the balloon, the warmer, lighter air in the building does still push upward. Because no building is free of small gaps and crevices between the indoor and outdoor space, the lighter air escapes the building through these openings. Meanwhile, the amount of air in the building needs to stay roughly in balance, so cooler, heavier outdoor air will push into the building from other gaps, usually near the base of the building. People often complain that they feel cold drafts in the winter around old windows, doors, and electrical outlets. This is the effect of temperature differential in those small gaps in our buildings. Something similar will happen in the summertime in a building equipped with air conditioning. Imagine the outdoor air temperature is 82 degrees and the air conditioner is programmed so the indoor temperature is 72 degrees. The indoor air is now heavier than the outdoor air, and the air pushes downward. The indoor air escapes through the lower gaps in the building, and the outdoor air replaces it through gaps in the upper levels of the building. Building scientists call the movement of air between the inside and outside of a building air exchange. The amount of air that is exchanged is affected by the temperature differential, the size of gaps between the outside and inside, and a few other factors, such as the height of the building. The greater the temperature difference and the larger the gaps, the more air will be exchanged. A taller building can act like a chimney. In the winter, the greater volume of warm air in the building pushes upward, creating additional pressure at the upper levels for it to escape. This leads to additional air exchange. All of these factors can lead to a building being better ventilated. The air within a building can also be affected by the winds outdoors. As the wind pushes against one side of a building, two things happen. First, some of the wind enters through the building through gaps. Second, the wind pressure creates a vacuum on the opposite side of the building. Air inside the building is drawn outside through the gaps on the side opposite the wind. Let's take a moment to consider both the good news and the bad news about this information. The good news is that nature, along with the way we heat and cool our buildings, creates natural air exchange. We can improve the ventilation by opening windows to take advantage of wind pressure or differences in temperature. The bad news is that when the temperature differences are most effective at moving air and improving ventilation, it's not energy efficient to open our windows because we're either running our heat or air conditioning. Opening our windows when it's 32 degrees outside creates great ventilation, but that's not so good for our comfort, our pocketbooks, or even the health of our planet. Another downside of natural air exchange is that on a calm day when it's 70 degrees out, very little air will move. This is a problem because today's stagnant air is not only filled with viruses, but other chemicals that we've introduced to our indoor spaces. In the 1800s, the invention of steam power offered an opportunity to design ventilation systems that didn't rely only on natural ventilation. Mechanical ventilation, such as fans, could give nature a boost and let us ventilate when we wanted the ventilation. The electrification of homes and other buildings, there were even more opportunities to add fans to move air. Today, we can install an exhaust fan in our home, in our bathroom, or above our stove that exhausts outside. When the fan is turned on, the air is drawn out of the home, just as a chimney draws the hot air and smoke away from the fireplace. And just as outdoor air needs to replace the warm air that leaves a building in the winter when the heat is on, outdoor air needs to replace the air we exhaust to the outside. Some ventilation systems are designed with a pathway for the outdoor air to enter the building, but often we just allow the outdoor air to enter the building through the gaps in the building exterior. The engineering of ventilation systems gets much more complicated than what we're showing here. Some systems force air into a building instead of exhausting it out. Some systems filter the outdoor air entering the building or heat or cool the air. And because air contains moisture or humidity, systems can be designed to take humidity and moisture control into account. As we fill in the gaps in our building exteriors to make them more energy efficient, we reduce the amount of air that is naturally ventilated by temperature differences and wind pressure. But with the help of energy experts, buildings can be tested to understand the amount of air exchange that is needed, the size of the fans that can move that air, and how often those fans should be run. For example, a fan or a set of fans installed on our walls or ceiling that runs continuously to move air between the indoor and outdoor spaces is now recommended to improve the quality of the air we breathe indoors. The key thing to remember when we think about pollutants and hazards to our health is that indoor air quality is just as important as outdoor air quality. What's outside comes inside, and what's inside builds up. Paying attention to your ventilation in your indoor air is especially important in the following situations. When there's a lot of pollution outside. This includes pollution from both big and sustained events such as wildfire smoke, and from everyday hazards like traffic exhaust. Opening your windows is a good way to bring in fresh air, but you should only open your windows if the air outside is safe. When you're using chemicals to clean your home, you should open windows or increase ventilation if you're using chemicals that can be hazardous to human health. When you're dealing with mold or a moisture issue, when you're addressing other indoor hazards like radon, carbon monoxide, or asbestos. Note that some of these issues can't be corrected solely by changing ventilation in your home, so be sure to consult a Healthy Homes professional to address problems with mold, moisture, carbon monoxide, radon, or asbestos. We hope you've enjoyed Healthy Housing 101, Ventilation. To learn more, check out NCHH's information and research on ventilation, indoor air quality, and health. ASHRAE's guidance for residential buildings on ventilation in COVID-19, and EPA's information on indoor air quality in your home at the links provided on your screen.